Success Mantra. We shape future.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us on a Sunday. I am sure you're here because either you're preparing for CLAT for your law entrance exams, or you are worried whether or not you should start preparing. Either way, what better advice and what better suggestion can you get than from somebody who's been there, done that, than from somebody who has really studied hard and acquired AIR, All India rank of 86 in CLAT exam. We have Apurva Vats with us. He is now studying at Nalsar, and we'll shortly ask him to introduce himself. I am Sanya Arora. I am here on behalf of Olive Board. Olive Board and Success Mantra have come up with very exciting courses on CLAD preparation that will take care of everything from your anxiety, from your confusion, from your not knowing what to do, when to do, how to do, to actually taking care of you, taking all the steps possible to cover all the bases, all the subjects in a very timely, strategic manner. So your rate of success goes from, let's say, 50%, 60% to 90 to 99%. So let's check out the courses in the description box. You'll find a link and you can get all the details that you want. Enough with that. I will now introduce you to Apurva, who's here to talk to you, share his wisdom, share his experiences very candidly, just to be able to help you manage your time and to get the lay of a land, just exactly what happens, what it takes when you start preparing for CLAT, and how you should manage your time, how you should manage yourself during your exam time, while you're in the exam hall writing the exam. Everything we'll be discussing with Apurva first, but let us get to know him a little bit before that. So, Apurva, can you please help us understand a little bit of where you're coming from and what would you be talking about with us today? So, over to you, Apurva.
Hi, my name is Apoor Vats and I'm from Delhi. I'm a first year student at Nalsar University of Law, Hyderabad. Well, I just finished first year, so I'll be starting with my second year at law school next semester. I gave
Wow.
CLAT in 2020, where my All India rank was 86, as was already told, and I scored 103.5 out of 150. And
Wow.
I'm really looking forward to this interaction and answering all the questions and concerns that our audience may have as CLAT 2022 aspirants.
Wow, Apurva, that's really exciting. One question that I would want to ask you before we go into the more technical bits of it. What made you think of pursuing law? Like, what drew you towards studying law?
So basically, I came to this realization to pursue law during the COVID pandemic. So after my class 12th exams, I gave a bunch of college entrance exams like DU entrance test, the DU joint admission test, CLAT, and a lot of those. And right after my board exams. And let me be very honest, I failed miserably in all of them. And it was me who was to be blamed because I prepared for none of them. I focused on none. I was looking for shortcuts. And the biggest of all mistakes was that I was trying to sail in multiple boats at the same time. But after giving CLAT, that was September 28, 2020. I gave CLAT in 2020 as well. So after giving CLAT, I realized that subject matter of CLAT was something that came naturally to me. I had a really good reading speed because I was in a habit of reading from a while. I read a lot of books, I read a lot of articles and all that. And while giving the exam, I enjoyed solving the legal aptitude and the critical reasoning problems. Reading legal concepts and then applying them to the fact scenarios was pretty challenging, but then at the same time, it was a very satisfying task. And unfortunately, this is something I discovered while giving CLAT 2020. I consider CLAT 2022 to be the first mock I gave for CLAT. It was the first time I came across what exactly was there in the test paper. I'm not really proud of it, but this is really funny that for the first time, I got acquainted with what exactly is there in the CLAT exam paper while giving CLAT itself in 2020. And in the hindsight, I sometimes regret that I did not prepare for CLAT seriously in 2020 itself. So basically, I really like the subject matter of the test. I really liked reading. I liked researching around the various current affairs topics that were relevant to the exam, and I felt that law would be a good career for me. And now that I have completed first year at Nalsar, I feel like it was one of the best decisions I could take to pursue law as a career.
Wow, Abul, that's really inspiring. I want to understand one thing from you. We talk about our successes all the time, and you're here to talk about yours. But it's so brave of you, and it's so candid for you to be able to also talk about your failures and how the first attempt was like the mock test for you. So, would you say that it's extremely, extremely important to really put yourself in that position and actually be taking the test before understanding what the test is all about? And do you think mock tests help in that regard?
So basically, what you can do is that you can take a lot of mock test to know what kind of aptitude CLAT requires and that if you would be a good fit for the exam.
Hmm.
So this is something you can do before delving into the full-fledged preparation of the exam. And a lot of students do is that they give dummy test attempts for CLAT. For example, in 11th grade only they give CLAT attempts. So this is something you can do to gauge if you will be better suited for law as a career and if CLAT is something that will match your aptitude.
Right. And would you say that you having the right mindset is also important? So even when you're giving your mock tests, you have to feel like you're really doing it for real to be able to really retain the experience of it all. So do you have any suggestions or anything you'd like to add to that?
So basically, I feel having the right mindset is really important because the mock test is something very crucial to your preparation. While you give mock test, you get into the habit of sitting for 2 hours, 2 hours straight and attempting all the sections. You get into a habit of how to manage your time. You get into a habit of you get acquainted with what kind of questions you may encounter in the real test. And what happens is that when you give a lot of these, when you're giving the real test, it just seems like a mock test to you. You do not really take it as that big day, you just take it as another mock test. So this is something what I did. I was taking mock tests at the same time when CLAT was supposed to happen, 2 to 4 every day during the last phase
Wow.
of my preparation. And this is something that helped me a lot because while giving the exam it just felt like just another mock test, just another mock test, just in a different scenario, different set, that is of an exam center. This is how mock tests help.
That's a very exciting, interesting way to look at it, and I'm sure that we're going to be discussing that in detail
Yeah.
towards the end of our discussion. So, before we delve into all of that, let's begin at the beginning. What was the first subject that you studied for CLAT and why? What was the first subject that you picked out?
So the very first thing that one has to do while preparing for CLAT is to read newspaper and preferably the Hindu. This is something I did as well, and trust me, reading newspaper has manifold benefits. First of all, you consume so much content that your reading speed increases naturally with time, and you will come across new words in the newspaper that will help you with vocabulary. So you naturally get better with your English section. And then, of course, newspaper is all about general knowledge and current affairs. So this helps you with general knowledge and current affairs as well. And you can also improve your reading skills while critical reasoning and reading skills while reading newspaper, as you can practice active reading while reading articles in the newspaper itself, the editorials, the columns, the national section, the international section. You can read all this and just like get into a habit of reading. So reading newspaper has manifold benefits, and this is what I begin with. This is something I did. This is the very first thing that I did while preparing for CLAT for the first time. When I started reading newspaper, when I started preparation, I took somewhere around 2 hours every day to read all the relevant articles in the newspaper. And towards the end of my preparation, I took around 45 minutes to an hour to wrap up the entire newspaper. So you can see this is a significant
Oh, wow.
increase in my reading speed, and there is an increase in my information intake capacity as well. So this is the very first thing to do while you start preparing for CLAT. And also I was taking notes while I was reading newspaper so that I could go back to them to revise current affairs and general knowledge for future reference. Now also one more really important thing is that you have to know what is relevant in the newspaper and what is not. Otherwise you will waste a lot of time reading articles which are of no use for you.
Right. So my next question, my follow up to that is, how do you identify what is important, what is not important, and would you also suggest that the aspirants should be reading legal newsletters as well? You know, something like Live Law or Bar and Bench to stay abreast or updated with the legal updates, legal news.
I feel in the newspaper, the front page is really important. You have to go
Front
through
page.
every article on the front page, the editorial section, read all the articles in the editorial section, because the quality of articles in newspapers like the Hindu, Indian Express is really good. It will help you increase your reading speed, and also it will help you build a really good vocabulary. Apart from that, you have to read the national news section, the international news section, and you can just have a glance over the sport news section. These are the articles that are relevant. And with time, when you read newspaper, when you're giving marks, when you see what kind of questions in the general knowledge sections are there, you are able to judge yourself which article is important in the newspaper and which article is not. So this is something you can do. And your question regarding bar and bench and live law, these websites are something which have in-depth articles on legal awareness and all that. So you can go have a glance at these websites, but I would not really suggest to devote a lot of time to these, because you won't really need it. This is something you'll need in your law school to stay abreast with what is happening in the legal world.
Hmm. All right. Thank you for clarifying that. And the next question is, so Apurv, how long did it take for you to prepare for your CLAT exam in 2021? Like, how would you summarize the entire duration of your preparation from the beginning till the end?
Basically, I gave CLAT 2020 on September 28th. The result was there in a few days, and I started preparation for CLAT 2021 in CLAT 2021 in November 2020. So this was about a month after CLAT result was declared. While I realized that CLAT would be the obvious choice, it took me a while to commit to it and take a firm decision that this was what I was going to do next. So I started preparation in November 2020. And as I said, I started with reading the newspaper. I started giving marks from the very beginning. I did not wait for my syllabus to complete, that I will finish all the syllabus, I will read all the concepts, and then I will start giving the mocks in the last month of my preparation. That is not something I did. I started with mocks every, in the beginning, I was giving mocks every 3, 4 days, and towards the end, almost every day. So that was one thing. Then I started solving a lot of sectional tests for each section. This is something I did. And the most important thing that I did while my preparation was to get into an habit of active reading, which is to connect with the content of the material, to critically analyze what is going on, to delve into it in so depth, to try to predict what may happen next, what has been happening so far. And basically, towards the end of my preparation, reading had become my second nature. So the most important thing that I did while preparing was to get into a habit of reading.
Right. And how long do you think an aspirant should prepare for CLAT before appearing for it for the first time? Can the entire preparation be done in 1 month? Or do you think that it would require a significant amount of time to develop that habit of reading and critically analyze everything to practice and then appear for CLAT? And if that is so, then how long does that take?
So basically, you won't need much preparation. More like some people prepare for 2 years or 1 year, they enroll in 1 year programs, 2 year programs to prepare. You won't need that kind of preparation if you are already in the habit of reading. If you're already in a habit of reading, you will pick up critical reading skills and active reading skills within a few weeks, in a matter of few weeks. But then again, I will say that 1 month is too less time to prepare, because you have to
Hmm.
cover a lot of general knowledge. You have to stay abreast with what is happening in and around the world. So 1 month is too less. But I feel if you already have good reading skills, you can prepare for CLAT in a matter of 3 to 4 months. It's not much.
Okay. Okay, that's great. And if you don't have prior experience with reading critically and analyzing everything properly, and if you haven't been reading newspapers at all, how long do you think a person like that would take?
Then I think you should put in at least an year, because the first 3, 4 months will go into building reading speed and reading skills. I
Hmm.
know a few friends of mine who are preparing for CLAT right now, and the biggest problem they are facing is that they are not able to read the complete paper.
Hmm.
So
Right.
they were not people who were habitual of reading.
Right.
So I suggested them to start with the newspaper, start reading a lot to
Hmm.
increase their information intake capacity. And to do these things, one needs at least a year, because the first 3 4 months of your preparation will just go into getting into an habit of reading. Because some of your competitors in CLAT exams, they have been into a habit of reading. They have been reading books, they have been reading articles, they have been reading so many things, they have been taking so much information inside their head since years. You're competing
Hmm.
with them. So in order to give a competition to them, in order to have a good shot at CLAT, you have to get into the habit, and this will take at least a year. The first 3 4 months, it will be devoted completely to reading. Reading is
Right.
the very basic thing you can do for CLAT preparation. It's the most important and the very foundation, very fundamental of your preparation.
I absolutely resonate with you. I completely agree with everything you just said, which brings me to my next question that a lot of aspirants ask and a lot of aspirants have is that okay, if we give 1 year to GLAD preparation, that means we'll have to start studying when we are in 12th standard. Or, if we start studying in advance or start preparing in advance, maybe we can start in 11th, but in 12th, we also have to give our boards. So,
Mhm.
how do you balance your boards with your CLAT preparation?
So for me, it was a pretty different scenario because I gave my boards in 2020, and CLAT was 3 to 4 months after the boards. It was in September. I gave my boards in March and April,
Hmm.
and CLAT was in September end, at September
Hmm.
end. So I had a lot of time to prepare. It's a different thing that I did not prepare. I was not focused in my CLAT 2020 attempt. And in CLAT 2021, I was in my drop year, so I did not have boards to face. But then I still have some advice for people who are appearing for boards and CLAT at the same time. It is that while I was preparing for CLAT 2021, I realized it does not need as much hours that you have to sacrifice the time you're studying for boards. Now, there may be people who are going to be like, okay, we might fail boards if we don't put in a lot of hours into it. Then trust me that failing boards is a pretty difficult task. It's more difficult than cracking CLAT. So you don't have to worry about that.
Right.
And there will be people who are like, we have to score at least 95% plus in boards, and like it's a matter of prestige for them. But then my one piece of advice for them would be that what does scoring 95% plus in boards get you? It just gets you bragging rights. And now it won't even get you admission into top DU colleges because you have the central university admission test there. So you have to make a choice there. You have to make a choice between either you give the boards with complete focus to get like 95% plus, or either you give CLAT. And
Right.
if you are completely inclined towards giving CLAT, if you're totally motivated towards getting into a top NLU, it's an obvious choice that you're going to focus on CLAT. It does not need much. And one more thing is that do not try to sail in two boats at the same time. I did the same. After my 12th boards, I gave multiple entrance exams. I studied for none because I was trying to focus on all. I was looking for shortcuts. So this is something you should not do. Just like make sure you do the bare minimum, not exactly the bare minimum. You prepare for 12th boards, and trust me, if you're good at reading, if you're good at cramming, you'll just get 90% plus somehow. It
Hmm.
do- it does not take that much of work, as much work CLAT takes. So don't fret too much about giving CLAT and 12th board exams at the same time. And the fact that we have CU set now, you do not have to worry about your board exams at all, because your board exam marks would not dictate which college you get. And if you're focused towards CLAT, why do you need to care about that at all? It does not
Right.
matter. It only gets you bragging rights.
Right. Thanks, Apurva. That was a very, very interesting take. Now, I also want to understand what is the best time allocation strategy that you would suggest. That should a person who's starting to prepare for CLAT, should that person sit for long hours continuously at a stretch, or take breaks in the middle and divide their day into short study sessions?
Mhm.
What do you think is a better strategy?
I think you should divide your day into short study sessions. You should
Hmm.
take breaks,
Hmm.
but then towards the end of the preparations, you might need to go and have like 4 5 hour long study sessions at once. So what I did was I divided my day into three sections. Every day has 24 hours, 8 hours of sleep, 8 hours of studying, and 8 hours of doing other stuff. So in the 8 hours I allocated for studying, those days that I gave mock, 2 hours for mock, 2 hours for analyzing the mocks, 2 hours for reading the newspaper and other general knowledge sources, and 2 hours for revising what has been done previously. So this is how I allocated my daily
Hmm.
time for studying for CLAT. And those days when I was not giving CLAT, I was giving sectional tests. So this
Hmm.
is how I was allocating my time completely. Even towards the end, I started feeling like 8 hours is not a lot of time to study in a day. I mean, 8 hours is not long hours. You can take breaks in between. You can give a CLAT mock. You can take a break for half an hour or so. You can then sit for 2 hours and analyze what you did in the exam. You can check your result and see what exactly where you went wrong. What can you do better? You can just note down what all sections need more practice and what all section needs more revision. And after that, you can just read the newspaper and other general knowledge sources. So this is how I did it. 8 hours,
Right.
honestly, it's not a lot of time. Towards the end of the
Right.
preparation, you will feel like 8 hours is like a breeze. You won't even know when 8 hours pass by.
Right. What do you think are the cons of studying long hours at a stretch? Let's say I just pick up one subject, I'm studying English for 8 hours a day. Then what do you think is the con to that? Instead of taking breaks every 2 hours, or dividing my allocating different hours to different kinds of things that I want to do.
So basically, the cons of studying for long hours is that you lose focus.
Okay.
And it's no use swinging a blunt axe.
Hmm.
It's just no use if you are not able to focus. You're just like sitting there wasting your time. If you are focused, if you are fresh, your mind is fresh, you are able to take in more information. Let's imagine you wake up in the morning, your mind is fresh, you study for 2 hours. The information that you take in those 2 hours will be much, much, much more than the information that you take for a 4-hour study session after studying for 8 hours already. So basically,
Right.
it's really important that your mind is fresh. You take breaks, you relax your mind, and then get back to studying again. If you study for long hours, eventually you'll be burned out. And this is not something you want because this studying for CLAT is a long process. It will take
Hmm.
you 3 4 months at least, even if you have a good reading speed. And if you don't have a good reading speed, it will take you an year. So you don't want to be sitting for 12 hours at a stretch for one straight year.
Right. Do you think there are any cons of studying for 2 hours and then taking a break and then starting to study again? There are people who take power naps, and then there are people who take, snack breaks, and they go out, and then their half an hour break turns into 1 hour, and then they think they wasted their day. So, what would you suggest is the best way to bring some discipline and bring some focus in those short breaks that we take during the day?
Honestly, this is very subjective. That there are people who will study for a short duration, take a power nap, and get back to studying again. And there's some people who take a power nap, and that power nap turns into a 8 hour long sleep session. So it depends on the person what works for you and what does not work for you. But one really big con of taking breaks between study sessions is that you have social media. You
Hmm.
take a break, you start scrolling through Instagram, and that scrolling goes on forever. It never stops. The content on Instagram, the content on Reddit, the content on Twitter, it's endless. And sometimes when people take a break, they just like go back to their phone and they just get lost in a spiral of social media and they waste a lot of time. A 10-minute long break session turns into a 2 hour long Instagram reel scrolling session. So this is one con of having small study session with small breaks, because those break do not remain small anymore.
Right.
They turn longer than your study session. So this is something big con is. And another thing is that while taking a break, what you can do is that instead of going back to your phone, you can play something, you can listen to music,
Hmm.
you can go out for a walk, you can go for a run. This is something that would be uh, that would be a better break time than just scrolling through social media or just like watching TV mindlessly. So this is one
Right.
con.
Right. That's absolutely correct. And when you are going out, when you're physically actively doing something, it also awakens your mind. It makes you more
Exactly.
active.
Exactly.
So you grasp information quickly, you become more productive, and that's a very, very good idea. And I think, like you said, it's very subjective how to inculcate that sense of discipline and focus in you. But I completely agree with the fact that the more you practice, the better you get at it. It's just that the idea is to stay at it and to force yourself to do it before you actually enjoy doing it. So
Exactly.
thank you for that, Apurva. My next question to you is that how did you time each section, like each subject that you had to study for your CLAT preparation? And is there anything that you did differently that most people who are listening to you right now would do or would even know can be done?
First of all, we have to realize that for preparation for three sections, that is critical reasoning, English, and legal aptitude, three of these go hand in hand because, as I've been emphasizing again and again, they require your reading skills. Now, the sections of critical reasoning and legal aptitude and English, they require some other things as well. For example, you need to be familiar with basic legal concepts like torts, contracts, criminal law for legal aptitude. And for critical reasoning, you need to know the basic tips and tricks of how to approach critical reasoning question. But the very foundation of all these three sections is that you have to know how to read actively and take in information inside your head in the best possible manner. So now I will tell you how I prepared for every section, what exactly I did there. So with English section, when I was reading newspaper, I was picking the difficult words that I was not able to know the meaning of. I tried to put the words in context and try to guess the meaning. And if I was not able to guess the meaning, if I was not close, I went to the dictionary and checked the word, what exactly it was, and I noted it down in a small diary. This helped me build up my vocabulary over the CLAT preparation phase. Other thing which I did was there's a website called vocabulary.com. It's a really good website to practice your vocabulary skills and you can compete with people and just learn new words in a fun way. Third thing what I did was give a lot of sectional tests for English. Because sectional tests, you learn how to manage time. If you decide that you're going to give 30 minutes for English section in the real exam, you make sure that while you're giving the sectional test for English, you take only 30 minutes, you do not take more. And if possible, you try to just reduce the time you're taking for completing the section. So I gave a lot of sectional test and I did a lot of mocks as well. So, and one more important thing is that giving mocks and giving sectional tests is not going to help you unless you analyze what you did there. You have to analyze where you went wrong. You have to analyze what all mistakes you did. You have to analyze what you need to revise, what you need to have a better understanding, what you need to have a better grasp of. So this is something I did. Now coming to critical reasonings, again, it's against sectional test and mocks. And one really good resource for preparing for critical reasoning is to go through GMAT critical reasoning guides. They have tips and tricks to how to approach questions, and they have really good question banks. So you can practice critical reasoning from there. Coming to legal aptitude, one tip would be to read a lot of basic legal concepts in advance because in the exam you will be given a short paragraph to read the concept during the exam. If you're already familiar with it, for example, let's say there is a paragraph on the difference between murder and culpable homicide. So if you're already familiar with it, you do not have to read it. You can simply go and attempt the questions. So this saves you a lot of time. This is about 5 minutes of time you save there. So you can go and brush up with basic concepts like of contracts and criminal law, etc., etc. And this will help you a lot because it will save you a lot of time during the real CLAT exam. Now coming to GK. GK, as I said, newspaper, read newspaper, take notes actively, and keep going back to it. And there are a lot of YouTube channels which have a lot of content on GK. For example, even the Success Mantra channel has a lot of good videos on how to on different topics, different current affairs. So you can go there. And one important resource you can refer to for preparing for GK is you can refer to UPSC preparation guides. They have really good compendiums to go through GK at just one place, one source. Apart from that, especially emphasize on those topics that come in your sectional test and mocks. This is something I did. Whichever topic I saw that they were repeatedly coming in the mocks or the sectional test, I went back to them and revised it again and again. This is something I did for general knowledge. Now, coming to the quantitative techniques section, this is pretty tricky because a lot of law aspirants they struggle with it. But then trust me that the 15 questions of quantitative techniques, the 15 marks that you get, they're the easiest marks to bag if you slog enough with quantitative techniques. And if you put in the time and efforts, these 15 marks will have the highest return on investment. Because if you go have a look at the rank list, 15 marks can have a difference of thousands of ranks. So just go through the pain of studying maths for the last one time and get through the very basics like percentage, ratio, proportion, time and work, mensuration. And I think that is all. Because if you're thorough with these topics, if you just somehow get your calculations fast, you will easily bag like 10 to 12 marks out of these 15. And these 10 to 12 marks make a difference of thousands of ranks. And a lot of law aspirants, they just like drop the quantitative section completely. So also, one more thing, just keep in mind that this is not some basic advanced maths like calculus or trigonometry. It's pretty easy. This is the level of math that you must have done in ninth and 10th grade. So there's not much to do here. You just have to get your calculation speed fast, and you just have to get thorough with how to calculate percentage, how to the concepts of ratio, proportion, the time and work, mensuration, and just that. That's all. That's all you need to do with maths. That's all what I did for maths.
Okay.
That was how I approached the 5 sections, the preparation of these 5 sections.
Wow. Okay. Thank you, Apurva. Would you say that preparing by doing sectional tests and mock tests and also previous year papers that helps you in managing your time better? If so, then how? So at first, I believe that you need to put in a lot of time. At first, you can't really be thinking about how much time you're taking in every section. But then, after you start taking mocks and you start trying previous year papers and you start identifying repeated questions and things like that, how do you think doing that helps in managing your time, and how do you actually incorporate that while you are actually giving your CLAT exam?
So the first time I gave the CLAT exam in 2020, which was also my first mock test,
Hmm.
I could not reach the quantitative section, quantitative technique section. I lost 15 marks there. And I realized, had I practiced before with mocks, had I known how to allocate time properly, I would have easily attempted those 15 questions and I would have already been in an NLU in 2020 itself. So what I realized is that giving mock test helps you know how to allocate time. You try different permutation and combination, which section to attempt first, which section to attempt last, and eventually after giving 5-10 marks, you realize what works for you better, how much time each section needs from you, and you also learn how to judge the exam, how to know which section is tough, which section is easy, which section is easily scoring, which section is tricky. So this is something you get from mock test. So what I would try to say is what I'm trying to say is that give a lot of mocks because you will know how to allocate time, and then you will also get into a habit of completing the given section in the given time frame. The same goes with sectional test. You start with sectional test. I would suggest one should start with sectional test because one does not already have the habit of sitting through 2 hours long reading and critical reasoning session, right? So you start with a 20-minute sectional test. Let's say you attempt the quantitative section technique section in 20 minutes. This is the first time you're giving it. Let's say you take 30 minutes for it. It's not advisable to take 30 minutes, but you can just like for starting. Let's say you make it a target to complete it in 30 minutes. A few sectional tests later, you make it a target to complete it within 25 minutes. A few sectional tests later, you make it a target to complete it within 20 minutes. This is how you should approach sectional tests. This is how you should, and eventually, when you start attempting mock test, you just use all the experience you gain from all these sectional tests, combine it, and give your best effort in a 2 hour long session. So this is how you deal with time allocation for the test during exam. What I personally did was that towards the end, I made it a point to complete the GK and the quantitative technique section within 30 minutes, no matter what. And the rest of the three sections, legal aptitude, English, and logical reasoning, they take 30 minutes each. This is how I did it.
Okay, great. So Apurva, how do you actually prepare for the D day? How do you prepare for you going to the exam hall and having those 2 hours or 3 hours, depending on what time you're given to complete the CLAT exam? How do you prepare yourself for that? And anything that you think the aspirants could do to maximize their productivity in the exam hall during giving their CLAT exam?
First of all, I would say that the day before CLAT exam, do not fret at all that I did not do this concept, I'm not thorough with this GK topic, that I don't know about this current affair section. Do not fret about it at all. Get plenty of sleep, 8 to 10 hours at least. Hydrate and avoid screen time if your exam is offline. And even if your exam is online, avoid screen time because it will help you sleep better. Other thing is, do not overthink that what happens if I fail, what happens if I'm not able to make through it, what happens if I don't get a good NLU and all that. Just do not overthink. This is just going to put a mental block on your head and you won't be able to perform better. One really crucial advice that I would give is that read the newspaper even on the exam day. This is what I did because this put me in the reading mode that I was already reading before the exam. I already woke up and read the newspaper, so I was already in the reading mode. And what happens is that you hit the track running while attempting the exam. These are the few things that I followed on the exam day, on the day before exam.
So you start reading before you actually enter the exam room,
Exactly.
exam hall.
You start reading before you actually enter the exam room because it is. Imagine you're going to run a sprint and you do not warm up
Hmm.
at all.
Hmm.
How would that
Hmm.
be like? You will just fail miserably. This is what I did. I just read the newspaper before I went inside the exam hall. I mean, not exactly before I went inside the exam hall, 1 or 2 hours before. I was just in a reading mode. So
Wow.
basically, when I went inside the exam hall, I saw the paper. I did not have to put my mind back again in the reading mode. It was just,
That
yeah.
yeah, that's very interesting. Very interesting. Okay, so what is the first thing that you suggest aspirants should do once they open their question paper? So they've just opened it, and what is the first thing that they should be doing according to you?
I feel the very first thing one should do is that skim through all the section and ascertain which sections are scoring and which ones appear to be tricky. Now, while you give marks, you will get into a habit of judging exams over time and knowing which section is tricky and which section is scoring. The first time you open a mock, you won't be able to judge which section is tricky and which section is scoring because after you get the result of your first mock, you will be like, okay, I judged that the legal aptitude section was really easy, but I'm scoring really bad, and I judged that the critical reasoning section was really tough and I'm scoring really good. The first time your judgment will be really bad, but over time, as you give more and more mocks, your judgment will get better. So the moment you open the question paper on the D day, just like judge which is scoring and which is tricky and attempt the scoring section first. Do not be rigid with which sections you are able to. I mean, some people get into a habit of doing key. First of all, we'll do quantitative techniques, then we'll do GK, then we'll do legal aptitude, then we'll do this. They get into a order and they like be rigid with it. Don't be like that. Because what may happen is that on the day of exam, the QT section may be really tough. You're into a habit of doing this first, you attempt it first, but then after you are done with the QT section, you will feel like I just totally messed up the exam, and your mindset won't be really good to attempt the coming sections. So basically, judge which section is scoring, attempt it first. And because this section is scoring and you're able to do it pretty quick, you'll have a confidence boost by the time you approach the tricky sections. And the thing is, you won't lose marks. What may happen is that you attempt the tricky section first. Okay, I'll have a lot of time, I'll attempt the tricky section first. What happens is that you put in a lot of time, you you put in a lot of efforts, but you're not able to score, you lose confidence, and you don't have time to attempt the scoring sections. This is something what I did. I was not at all rigid with which sections to attempt first and which sections to attempt last. What I naturally found though was that for me, QT and general knowledge section was really easy. So I attempted them in the beginning. But I was not rigid with them. If I ever found that there were questions in the GK section which were tough, I didn't know, or if the QT section turned out to be tough, I did not attempt them in the beginning. I started with English or whichever section seemed easier. This is something I would advise everyone. Don't be rigid with the order of sections you go through. Attempt the scoring sections first and go to the tricky sections towards the end of the exam.
Okay, that's
Yes.
that's also an interesting approach, because I think a lot of the aspirants and a lot of students go in with the mindset of doing the questions that will take them more time first. So when it comes to English questions, the comprehension questions, or when it comes to legal reasoning or logical reasoning, where they have those passages and you have to go through them, so you know you're going to spend a lot of time on them. So a lot of aspirants also adopt that strategy. We'll talk about that in detail when we talk about how to manage time in separate sections elaborately. You've already touched upon them. But before we do that, just generally, broadly, how do you think one should manage their time in the exam hall? Once they started writing their paper, once they started giving answers, however they wish to start, they've opened the paper, they've started. But a lot of the times you lose track of time. Sometimes you don't look at your watch, sometimes you don't really know, you're not consciously aware of how long it's taking for you to answer those questions, and by the end of it you don't really know what happened. And a lot of the times, there are questions that you could have just left because of negative marking, but you still attempt doing those things, and you think that maybe I can get this right, and that also wastes a lot of time. So what would your suggestion be to overall manage time during your CLAT exam?
So my overall time management strategy for me, what worked was that as I said it before, I gave 30 minutes for both the QT section and the current affairs and general knowledge section. This is something I think is pretty reasonable. This is something I feel like everyone should follow. If you're taking more than 20 minutes for QT section, it's not worth it. You're going to eat up time for the rest of the sections. If you're taking more than 10 to 12 minutes for general knowledge section, it means you're trying to guess the answers. So don't take more than 30 minutes for these sections. The rest of the sections you can take 30 minutes each. Read them thoroughly. For the legal aptitude section, if you're already thorough with the legal concept that are mentioned in the paragraphs, you really don't need to read it in detail. You can just like have a glance, skim through it, and just attempt the questions. In English, read it thoroughly, and the same goes with critical reasoning. So that was my management strategy. 30 minutes for QT and GK. These are scoring sections. If you prepare for GK pretty, if you prepare for GK in a pretty good manner, you'll be able to score a lot. If you are thorough with the basic concepts of maths, the 9th, 10th grade level, it will be easy to do it in 20 minutes. So this is how I did it for these two sections, and for the rest three, 30 minutes each. At times, it may happen that the legal aptitude section has a passage which you are not aware of, which you are not familiar with. So you may take like 5-10 minutes more there, and you can try to go through the English section in a more quick manner. That's what you can do there.
Right. So the questions that you're absolutely sure of, you do them quickly. And the questions that will take you time, you put them later after you've actually done the scoring bits. That is the
Exactly.
general pattern and the general sequence that you would suggest. So overall, how does one remain cognizant of the time as well as writing the paper? So if you keep looking or glancing at the watch every 5 minutes, or if you keep asking the invigilator how long it's been and everything, you don't really know. So how do you think that awareness of time and the fact that time is of the essence should not be a nerve wracking experience, or should not be really putting you off your game and telling you that, okay, no, if you've taken too much time, then this will not go right, or that will not go right. And a lot of aspirants just freeze at that point, and they like, they even the answers that they know, they do it wrong because they think that they've taken a lot of time. So how would you suggest, I mean, not just mentally preparing yourself, okay, I have 30 minutes, I'm going to take for this, 30 minutes for this, 30 minutes for this. But if that doesn't work in the exam hall, god forbid you take 40 minutes, 45 minutes for one section that you should have taken 30 minutes for, then how do you calm yourself, and how do you remain mentally strong to be able to cover up in the other sections, even if you've taken more time in one section. So any suggestions for that?
First of all, what happens is that when you give a lot of mocks, you are
Hmm.
already into a habit of allocating time to each section. And when you give a lot of these towards the end of your preparation, you feel like you do not even need to look at the clock.
Hmm.
For example, towards the end of my preparation, I remember when I used to complete the QT section, I did not look at the clock at all while I was attempting it. Towards the end, I used to look at the clock and I used to see it's 15 to 20 minutes all the time. So when you get into a habit of giving marks, you know how to allocate time. Now, coming to the question where you said what happens if you take more than 30, 40 minutes, like inordinate
Hmm.
amount of time for one section,
Hmm.
then just keep calm.
Hmm.
Make sure that the section that you have attempted, you have given so much time to, you have attempted it correctly. And like I said, if you attempt the scoring sections first, you won't take so much time. If you're into a
Okay.
habit of taking marks, you won't put in so much time with one section where you give 45 minutes of time to, let's say, the legal aptitude section and give 20 minutes to English and 15 minutes to critical reasoning. This is not going to happen there. So just in case that happens, that you're not able to keep track of time, is the exam day, you're nervous and you're not able to hold on to your nerves, just stay calm and just remember that panicking will lose you more marks.
Right.
That should not be your approach where you start panicking and just lose whatever time you have left and lose whatever marks you can still back.
Right. So practice is the key.
Exactly. With practice, you will know how much time you're allocating and you won't even have to look at the clock. I remember in CLAT 2021, there was a notification by the consortium that the clock watches won't be allowed in the exam hall.
Hmm.
And a
Hmm.
lot of students were panicking, how are we going to manage our time? And this was when I realized, okay, so giving so many marks has one more benefit, that you already know how much time you're allocating and you really do not have to look at the clock. You can just get it
Right.
done with habit. You can get into a habit of just completing uh, GK plus QT in 30 minutes, 30 minutes each for the rest sections. This was the standard time set for me.
Right. So, Apurva, did you set that time for yourself, or did anybody else tell you that you should
This is
invest this
something
much amount?
this is something I uh, came to after giving a lot of marks. In the initial few marks, I was not able to complete the QT sections. At least 15 to 20 questions
Hmm.
were I used to leave in the first few marks. This is something I did in CLAT 2020 as well. I scored 76.25 in CLAT 2020
Hmm.
and I did not attempt quantitative techniques. So, had I attempted, these were the questions that I knew. Had
Hmm.
I been fast enough and had I attempted quantitative techniques in 2020, I would have scored at least 10 more marks and I would have been in the top 3 NLU back in 2020 itself. So,
Right.
this is something you should always keep in mind, that
Right.
proper time allocation, proper time management can matter more than 5 to 10 marks, and that will result in a difference of thousands of ranks.
Absolutely.
This is something really
Absolutely.
important. And when you give marks, initial few marks, you will feel like you're running out of time, but towards the end of it, it will get
Hmm.
sorted. Trust me. When you get into the habit of it, it will get sorted. What a lot of students do, they are like, we'll complete a syllabus, we will complete all the concept that we have to study, we'll read all the GK, and then we'll start giving mocks in the last 1 week or in the last 1 month. That is not something you should do at all.
Right.
Because my primary material for preparation was mocks only. That's what I did. Mocks and sectional test.
Wow.
Manifold benefits. You get how to, you know how to allocate time, you know how to judge the exam, you know which section to attempt first, you know which section to attempt later, and you get an awareness about what section of the exam matches your aptitude better.
Right.
You have an idea of what kind of questions uh, you may encounter in the real exam. For example, after giving 70 to 80 marks, and each marks has five different kinds of क्या कहते हैं, five different topics on legal aptitude. You give 70 marks.
Hmm.
You practice around 300 legal aptitude sections. So in the real exam, I don't think there is something out of the box they're going to come out with. You are already familiar with it. You just have to skim through it and just get done with the question. You save a lot of time.
That's a very good tip, Apurva. Thank you for that. Which brings us to the next discussion that we can have now. So you have broadly explained that okay, quantitative techniques plus English should take 30 minutes.
No,
English you said
quantitative techniques plus GK should take 30
plus
minutes.
GK should take 30 minutes, and rest every section should take 30 minutes each. Now, when we are say allocating 30 minutes to our English section, how would you suggest to manage the questions in the English section to complete it in 30 minutes?
So, first of all, keep a pen with you. Keep underlining all the points that you feel like that may be important. And one more really important tip, read the questions before reading the paragraph.
Hmm.
Because when you read the question already, you know what you have to look for in the paragraph, you know what exactly you're looking for. So basically, read all the questions, don't go through the options. For example, one passage has 5 questions. If you read all the 5 questions, you do not look at the options because that will divert your mind. You just read the questions and then you go to read the passage. And when you read the passage, you just know what exactly you have to look for. And you keep a pen with you to keep underlining it. This is something you can do for English. If you have a really good reading speed, each passage will take you 3 to 4 minutes, not more than that. This is something which
Right.
I did. I read the questions, go to the passage, look for what the question is asking, keep underlining, and that's how you attempt it. And it took me
Okay.
barely 25 minutes to complete the English section.
Wow. Wow.
Yes.
That's great.
And when you have questions on vocabulary, when you have questions on synonyms and antonyms, at times what may happen that even if you have prepared vocabulary a lot, you will feel like you are not familiar with this word, you have never seen this word, then you can try to fit the word in context.
Hmm.
You can see what other words are around it, what it might mean, and you can try to fit it in context and match with the options you have there. Because there's just so many
Right.
words, it's not possible for you to be familiar with all of them. The same goes with synonyms and antonyms. You just like fit the word into context in context of the passage and try to guess what the meaning is. That's what I
Right.
do.
Absolutely. And somebody who has not been very well spoken in English, or has not been very well read, or somebody who is not very good at English generally, do you have any, apart from reading newspapers, any books or any free resources that they could look at to improve their English language, to understand the passage better, synonyms, antonyms, the grammatical topics?
Honestly, I feel like the books that claim to be solely for the purpose of helping you read,
Hmm.
that claim to be that you read this book, you learn how to read,
Hmm.
those don't work at all. You read how to learn by reading.
Right.
So, in case you newspaper is tough for a person to read, you start with eighth grade books. You start with sixth
Hmm.
grade book. You start with seventh grade
Hmm.
book. You try to read it as fast as you can, and you slowly and gradually increase the level of the content that you're taking in and the content that you're consuming. You can, for example, let's say for a person, the Hindu is really difficult because the articles in there are really complicated and the vocabulary used is really tough for a layman to understand. You can start with newspapers like Hindustan Times or Times of India. You can start gradually and slowly. And if you are looking for books to increase your vocabulary, there is this one book by Norman Lewis. It's a really good
Hmm.
book. I tried to read it, but then I did not have enough time to complete it. It teaches you how to uh, guess the meaning of words through knowing the word roots. You know the roots of the words, so you can guess what
Hmm.
it might mean.
Wow.
So
Okay.
Word Power Made Easy. The book is called Word Power Made Easy by Norman Lewis. So you can refer to that book. It is a really good book on learning how to build a great vocabulary. This is something you can follow. And if you want a book for reading, like learn how to read, there is no such book. You have to read.
Right.
To learn how to read, you have to read. There are
Right.
no shortcuts, there are no uh, trick books to learn how to read. Basically, you just have to slog through it. That's how you
Right.
learn. Because I have many friends at Nalsar who had it really tough, who had it really tough in the beginning because they were not into the habit of reading and they started gradually. And that is how you're going to do it. You have to start with active reading. Yes, if you are asking about how to read in a speedy manner, there are books for that. There will be tips and tricks in there. I'll talk about that later in this session. So you can follow those books to learn how to read faster.
Right. Thank you, Apurva. I completely resonate with everything that you just said. That you have to read in order to inculcate a habit of reading or to learn how to read in yourself. Because English language and anything else for that matter is based on language. And if you don't understand language, you won't really be able to understand other subjects as well. So it's very important for you to develop that habit of reading. And I also think that you need to identify your weaknesses first. So whatever is your weakest link, whatever is your weakest subject, let's say you're not good at English, let's say you don't really understand legal reasoning or logical reasoning, or your current affair knowledge is really really bad, then you should pay more attention and spend more time on bettering that before you really start with your hardcore preparation of every section and going to the exam hall, and then identifying those weaknesses during writing the paper. Instead of doing that, it's good to first be very very open and honest with yourself about what will need how much work, and the weakest link will need to be covered first. What do you think about that, Apurva?
I totally resonate with you with all that you said just now. You have to
Hmm.
cover your weakest links. This is what I also did in the beginning of my preparation. I realized I was not able to complete the exam in time. I was feeling like I was
Right.
reading too slow. I worked on that. I even felt like that my GK section was pretty weak because I was not revising stuff. I was scoring really low there. So I started working on it. I started revising what all I read, and I made it a point that after every sectional test in GK, or after eh, every mock test, I went back to the topics that were asked and revised it. So
Right.
basically, that's what you have to do. You have to cover your weakest links, and the topics that you're pretty thorough with, just like keep revising it and make sure
Keep reviewing.
your performance does not degrade. You have to
Absolutely.
maintain your performance in the topics that you're pretty good with, and with topics, let's say some people are not really thorough with the QT section. So you just have to practice a lot. That's what you can do, because 15
Right.
marks of the QT section, that makes a lot of difference. So the weakest section,
Right.
and one more important thing you have to understand is that if you have a really strong section, let's say you are scoring 30 out of 40 in legal aptitude, and it's just plateaued, the marks are not increasing, you cannot do much about it except maintaining it. But if you see that in the quantitative section you are scoring only 2 out of 50 and not even putting in any effort because you feel like, okay, I'm just so bad at it, but I'm good at legal aptitude, even though my marks are pretty stagnated, I'm going to put in all the efforts in the legal aptitude. That's not the approach you should take. You should go to quantitative aptitude, because you see you're only scoring 2 and you're not even putting in any effort. If you put in any effort, the return on investment in that section, if you're not scoring good, will be much greater than a section where you're already scoring good and your marks are stagnant. So just
Right.
work on your weakest links, because there's a lot of potential to improve there. If you just
Absolutely.
let's say you say feel like you are really good with GK, you're scoring like 35, 36 out of 40 in every mock, in every sectional test, and you just sit down every day and just revising the same thing. Okay, I'm just like going to put in all my time and efforts into this section no matter what, because this is my best section, it makes me feel good about myself. That's not how it's going to work in the real exam. You have to go look at those sections. For example, let's say you're not able to do critical reasoning, you're scoring really bad, and you have totally given up on it. That's not how you're supposed to approach the exam. You have to work on it because it has the highest potential to improve.
Absolutely. And in this competitive exam, just like any other competitive exam, more than anything, it's a test of your character. So it's very
Exactly.
easy to hide behind the cloak of, you not knowing something, or you not being good at that, and you thinking that, okay, ये तो मुझे आता ही नहीं है, the other thing I'm better at, so उसमें तो मेरे marks आ गए, इसमें नहीं आए because ये मुझे नहीं आता था. So that is no excuse. You have to work on what you think you're not good at. If you think that aata hi nahi hai and you'll be able to hide behind that and still be able to get a good rank, that's not possible. So thank thank you, Apurva, for that. Moving on, the next sectional tip that we would like from you is how to manage time in our legal reasoning section. especially because a lot of the concepts are the concepts that we will be studying for the first time. The aspirants are studying for the first time in 11th standard, 12th standard, talking about torts or contracts or IPC or any other basic legal concept that ideally everybody should be aware of, because these are the laws that govern our everyday existence, but we do not study them in school. And this is the first time we are really being acquainted with them. So how do you think we should prepare for that? How our time should be managed while preparing, and how our time should be managed while attempting those questions in the exam hall?
So for legal reasoning questions, personally, what worked for me was that I did not go to any other material to read everything in beforehand. What I did was that I attempted mock. The first mock, I was introduced to 5 new legal concepts. So I made it a point to go through those legal concepts again and again, revise it, jot it down in a diary to know how I can go back to it afterwards. So if you put in CLAT if you are preparing for CLAT for over a year, you have 52 weeks. And if you're preparing for, if you're giving a mock every week, you give 52 mocks. 52 mocks and 5 legal section in each of them. So basically, that's somewhere around 250 legal sections, legal aptitude passages. So if you just make it a point to each time you give a mock or each time you give a sectional test to jot down whatever concept was there in a diary and just go back to it and revise it, you won't have to refer to any other material. You'll have basic concepts like torts, criminal law, family law, and contracts and all these things. If you just like keep noting it down each time you attempt to mock the new concept that you're introduced to, the next time you give a mock and the same concept is in there, you don't have to read the passage, you can just attempt the question. This is something what I did each time I attempted a mock. I just made it a point to note it down, go back to it and revise. And the next time, even in the real exam, when I saw the legal passage, there were few of them which I was already familiar with, so I did not have to read it in depth. I just skimmed through it and just attempted the question. That saves you a lot of time. And this is what I would advise to everyone out there, that each time you do a sectional test or each time you do a mock test, make it a point that you remember all the concepts that were in there and you note it down so that you can refer to it for future reference. You don't have to refer to any other material for that matter.
Right.
That's all you need. That's completely, totally sufficient. For example, I gave around 70 mocks. There are 5 passages in each mock. That's around 350 legal aptitude passages. And I don't think the CLAT exam makers will come up with something totally out of the box that you're not familiar with. They may come up with like 1 or 2 passages, but then it's all going to be familiar because you are in a habit of dealing with legal questions. That's the
Right.
approach one should have.
And in my experience, what I've seen is that they also ask you a lot of questions about topics that are already in controversy during the last three
Yes.
months. So,
And
for
the thing
example,
is,
if marital rape is something, yeah,
for example, marital rape is in controversy in the last 3 months. I'm pretty
uh,
sure that a question on this will be included in your mock test. That is what happened
right,
with me during 2021 preparation of CLAT. A lot of those mock tests had questions on force majeure. So I was already
right,
pretty familiar with the topic. So all the topics
right,
that are in news, they're going to be in your mocks no matter what, because the people who draft the mocks, they are also aware of it and they know what is important, what is not. For doing this, you can, let's say you do not delve deep into it, but you can always go and have a quick glance on live law and bar and bench. This is something you can do. Live
exactly.
law and bar
So,
and bench, and when any contemporary legal issue is like is making news, you will always find it in the explainer sections of Indian Express and the Hindu. You can make notes of it to make sure you are
right.
aware.
Absolutely. And I would also like to add to that and say that you can always go to their YouTube channels as well, where they have these 5 minutes and 10 minutes roundup videos on a weekly basis that tell you all the legal developments that have happened in courts during the week. And that is a very, very good way to stay updated. And it's not important for you to go in depth and say, okay, which section says what, and exactly, what was held in that particular case, but you should have an overall idea about what is the take of the judiciary, what is the take of the government, what is the take of all the stakeholders, was, what is the debate all about. So the broad idea you should have. I mean, it's a good thing that CLAT does not have a writing section where you actually have to subjectively give answers and write about what you know about that subject, and you should take advantage of that, and really be familiar with what is being asked and put that into context, especially in the legal GK, legal reasoning questions, because a lot of the times they'll just pick out the facts, they'll change the names, or they'll just say A did this to B and C did this to D, and that's actually based off of a real case, and then you'll have to apply your legal aptitude to that. So that is another tip. So with that, we come to the next section, Apurva. The next sections are logical reasoning and quantitative techniques. So you've already said that quantitative and GK में 30 minutes लगने चाहिए. GK, we've talked about how to cover our knowledge on general affairs and how to read newspapers every day. But quantitative techniques may the kinds of questions that are asked, that you also say that is the one section that you actually suffered a lot in your first attempt at CLAT. So what were your lessons and how would you suggest time management while preparing for these sections, logical reasoning and
I
quantitative
I
techniques?
personally I suffered a lot in my first attempt in quantitative techniques because I did not have enough time. I knew how to attempt the question. I knew what the answer was. I went back to it later
Hmm.
and attempted it and I could do it. But the problem with me was that I did not focus on it. I was pretty slow. So I did not have enough time left for attempting quantitative techniques. What I
Hmm.
feel should be the right strategy for attempting quantitative techniques is that you first of all go through all the basic concepts that are there, like ration, proportion, percentage, mensuration, and all that. And you jot down all the formulas, all the tricks. You can go through YouTube channels like Success Mantra and know the explainer of these quantitative techniques topics. And you can just jot down the formulas and tricks. And what you can do is, like, every day, no matter what may happen, you attempt a sectional test on quantitative techniques. So when you do sectional test, you'll come across variety of questions. You know how to solve it. For example, in the first sectional test, you come across a certain type of question. While you may not know it in the first time how to do this, but once you're done with it and once you know how to do it, later when you come across this question, you'll know, "Ki, okay, this is how I have to approach this question. I have done this before, and it will just become easier for you." And also, what a lot of people suffer with quantitative techniques is that they are not able to allocate proper time. So the first time you give a sectional test, let's say this is the first time you're doing it, you take 30 minutes. But eventually, over time, the time you take reduces. Eventually, you will be able to wrap up the entire, all the 15 questions in a span of 15 minutes or even in 20 minutes. Let's say if the questions are pretty difficult. So this is something you can do for completing your quantitative technique questions. And most important thing, attempt 20 questions of various topics every day, no matter what you are doing it. Let's say you're preparing for CLAT for over uh, a year. You have 365 days and 70 and 20 questions every day. That's a hell lot of lots of questions. That's basically 7,200. Yeah,
Wow, nice.
7,200 questions over a span of a year.
Hmm.
And 20 questions you have to do it apart from the mocks
Right.
if you're not so good with maths. And trust me, this math is
Right.
not rocket science. It's something you have already studied in ninth and 10th grade. Taking out percentages is not really that difficult. Taking out ratio and proportion is not really that difficult. Time and work is not that difficult. Mensuration, you just have to apply the formulas. And the tricky questions, I'm pretty sure you will come across plenty of them in your sectional test and mocks. And once you have attempted one kind of tricky question, you will feel pretty confident when you see another question of the same kind. So quantitative techniques is not that rocket science. It's not calculus that you have to fret too much about it. It's 15 marks for free. What happens is that a lot of students say that in sections like critical reasoning and in sections like legal aptitude, they feel that the answers might be subjective. That's not the case with quantitative techniques. There's a certain number. So it's pretty easy. You just have to slog through it. if there are people who are not so good with maths, you can start by doing basic calculation. One more important thing that you can do is you can learn how to multiply quick and divide quick and add quick and subtract quick. These things you can do.
Right.
Practice for the quantitative technique questions. And you can refer to books like R.S. Agarwal, the examination. There is a book called R.S. Agarwal for examination. It's a MCQ question books. You can use that as a question bank to attempt all the questions
Okay.
and practice.
Okay.
And yeah,
And logical reasoning?
for logical reasoning, there will be two sections. There will be two kinds of question. One will be critical reasoning and one will be analytical reasoning. For analytical reasoning, again, you can refer to books like R.S. Agarwal. Can go have a look at those puzzles and try a lot of them, lots and lots of them. And for critical reasoning, again, it's about you reading. There are certain concepts in critical reasoning that you have to know. For that, you can refer to books like the GMAT guide, GMAT critical reasoning guide, and GMAT question banks. That's like the best source you can study critical reasoning from. So refer to those for sure for critical reasoning and analytical reasoning. There are plenty of books out in the market. For example, there's the R.S. Agarwal book, and you'll find books by many publications for that matter. And the most important thing is for all these sections, every possible kind of questions that you can encounter in the real exam, you would have already encountered in the sectional test and the mock test. Because you would have given
Right.
so many of them that you would know that every possible kind of question you have already encountered, every possible tricky concept, every possible hidden trick that is there in the question, you would have already been familiar with it if you have given lots of sectional tests and mock tests.
Right. Thank you, Apurva. Any peculiar quirks do you have, or any exam hall rituals do you follow when you go to the exam center? Anything that you do to make sure that you have the right mindset and the luck to really succeed in that exam?
As I said, this is not really
Hmm.
something that is advisable, but I really don't eat because it makes me feel sleepy. I don't eat before any exam, no matter when it is. Even if it is
Hmm.
in the evening, I don't eat at all because eating makes me
Oh.
sleepy. So this
Do
is
you have
something really important.
coffee?
Yeah, I do have coffee.
Okay.
Take in
Nice.
caffeine, but just don't get into an
Hmm.
habit of it because it will harm you in the long run. Second thing, as I told you, I already read a lot of material before I sit for the exam. For example, the CLAT, it requires reading, so I'll already read a lot of material before I sit for the exam. This is something that puts my mind in that zone, the reading zone already. Like I
Hmm.
give you that analogy that let's say you have to do a 100-meter sprint. You don't
Hmm.
just like hit the track without any warm-up. That's the same approach
Right.
I take towards exam. For example, if I have a math exam, I already make it a point to solve a few math sums before sitting for the exam because my brain will already be in that zone. The same for CLAT. I read the news, at least the newspaper on the day of the exam as well. Not exactly right before entering the exam hall, but
Hmm.
let's say at least 1 or 2 hours before it.
Hmm.
You can do that. This is
Hmm.
one more. This is one quirk that I have. Apart from this, I don't think any. I don't think there is anything else.
But it's really helpful actually. You're absolutely right. When you eat, you feel sleepy
Yeah,
and you feel lazy. So while it can be a bad thing to do on a daily basis, but on the days you're giving your exam, you have to be completely active. So a very, very good tip. Thank you, Apurva. Another thing I would like you to share with our aspirants is that what is the best time management tip that you've received or strategized on ever? Uh,
the best
any
tip, as I've been emphasizing a lot so far in this session, is that learn speed reading techniques. This is one tip that I got from one of my seniors, and there are a few tips about speed reading that you can get from the internet or also from various books on speed reading. And it's a book on speed reading, not a book on reading. There are no books on reading. You have to learn reading by
Hmm.
reading. But you can
Hmm.
get few tips on speed reading, which are like, first of all, when we read, we have this inner monologue going on. When you read something, there is this sub vocalization of the words inside your head. If you can stop that with practice, it will increase your speed by a lot. That's what
Wow.
I did. I remember when I used to read, there was this monologue going inside my head that I'm reading. Okay, what is the best time management? It's going on inside my head. when I'm reading. Even though I'm not speaking, it's going on inside my head. If you're able to stop it with practice, it is the best thing you can do because this will increase your reading speed manifolds. So stop the inner monologue that is going on inside your head. Another thing is that when you see a beginner reader, when they read something out loud, you see that they're speaking one word at a time, and that's how they take it in one word at a time. For example, my name is Apurv. They will take it as my name is Apurv. So what you can do is you can try word chunking. You take my name is at once, is Apurv at once. So you can try word chunking. You take in four words at once and intake the information like this. So you can try word chunking. You can stop that inner monologue. And one thing that I would say in an exam like CLAT, while you're short of time, you don't have much time in your reading, is that do not reread at all. Because if you have to reread the sentence, you're wasting time. You should have understood it in the very first reading. So just do not reread it at all. If you feel like, because you have already read the questions, if you feel like it is important, then you reread it, otherwise just leave it there. Or if you feel like it's important to fit the other information in context, only then you reread it. There will be a lot of redundant material in passages. You don't have to read it. Other thing is, while reading, use your peripheral vision. For example, while you're looking at the screen or you're looking at the paper, you see one word in the middle that says classroom. You're reading the word classroom, but then you can use your peripheral vision to anticipate what might come next. So these few tips that I got from my seniors for reading in a faster way was something that helped me a lot to manage time, and this paid off eventually.
Wow, Apurva, they were really, really helpful tips, and I think that you've got it completely right. The crux of it all, the root of it all, is for you to be able to process information quickly.
Yeah.
And it's not just about time management or anything. It helps in life in general. Wherever you are, whatever you do, especially in the profession of law, you need to be able to read a lot in a very, very limited time period, and you need to be able to process it quickly. You need to be able to translate it for other people who don't understand it very well. So to be able to do all of that, you need to have these skills, and this is a golden rule of sorts. And thank you so much for sharing that with all the aspirants, Apurva. I'm sure it's going to help everybody manifold their potential and their ability to really score well in not just their CLAT exams, but also if they go to law school and then attempt their semester exams, and they'll be able to do way, way better then. So, which brings us to almost the end of our session. And before we go our separate ways, I would like to ask you, now that you've done all this work, you've been preparing, you attempted CLAT in 2020, you did it again in 2021, and then you scored so well, you got 86 AIR, and you also got admission in NALSAR. So after the entire turmoil of the lockdowns and everything else that was going on in life, and the loss of hope that a lot of students actually faced, a lot of people who are even working, they faced, after all of that and all the hard work that you put in, and now that you're at Nalsar, do you think that it was all worth it?
Uh, Honestly, the slogging that you go through CLAT is totally worth it because the slogging that awaits you at law school is even more satisfying. In hindsight, while preparing for CLAT, I was feeling like it's the end of the journey that I will get into a top NLU and I will really enjoy it. But now I feel like it's the process that I enjoyed the most. The preparation that I put in for CLAT and the satisfaction that I got out of it when I succeeded, that's what worth the most. And I have come with the same attitude to null, sir. I'm enjoying the process more than what outcomes I get. So, and also like studying at NALSA, receiving the best legal education from the best legal minds, and that too while having the company of equally amazing peer group is totally worth it. So, I would tell all the future aspirants is that enjoy the process. The outcome will be really good, the outcome will be really satisfying, but enjoy the process. Because once
That's
you get used to this slogging, once you get used to enjoying the slogging, you'll get it will be worth it, totally worth it.
That's actually that's such a wise and such a mature take on all of this, especially that, I mean, the fact that you're so young and to be able to understand that so well and so deeply, that's amazing, Apurva. Thank you so much for sharing that as well. Now we have some questions from our viewers right now. I'll just take them up
Mhm.
and let's see how we can help them. So Aditya has asked, I am in 12th class and this year we have term 1 and term 2 system, and due to that I missed many of the classes and the habit of reading also disrupted. So what will you suggest if I want to clear CLAT 2022 for sure?
I would say just make sure if you're not able to catch up with reading, that the sections like GK and quantitative aptitude, which do not require much reading, you're thorough with them. And even legal aptitude, if you're thorough with those concepts, you won't have to read during the exam. And while practicing legal aptitude, GK, and quantitative techniques, make sure that you are again equally focusing on trying to improve your reading speed in whatever manner you can. But
Right.
the main advice would be that if you're not able to do it, make sure that GK and QT are you attempt them with proper hard work, put in the work that is required for them. And
Right.
even for legal aptitude, because if you already know the concept, you can already read the concept beforehand. You won't have to read much. So you should focus on those.
Right. And the next question we have from Varun. Varun is asking, is it possible if someone is currently scoring around 70s and they can also go to National Law School in June 19 exam, the exam that is just coming up?
Honestly, the same thing happened with me as well. The last mock I gave before attempting CLAT, I scored 74. So it does not really matter much there. It fluctuates a lot. It depends on the difficulty level of the mock test. And if you're focused and if you're dedicated, consistently preparing for everything, you're just thorough with your GK concepts, you're thorough with quantitative techniques, you know the legal concept that might be asked, don't fret too much about it. You can get into a
Right.
good NLU if you're able to focus.
That's actually very, very helpful.
Because
Um,
even I, towards the end of my preparation, the last mock I gave, I guess I scored around 74 out of 150. So it does not
right.
indicate much.
Absolutely. So Varun has also asked how to improve critical reasoning. I'm scoring in 15 to 18 range. I'm not able to get a good score of 25 even after practicing because I do a lot of silly mistakes and I'm not able to overcome it.
I think Varun should focus on getting conceptual clarity in critical reasoning, and he can go through the GMAT critical reasoning guides and just read the concepts there. And when he reads the concept, make it a point to consciously apply the concepts while attempting the questions. Initially, he will be consciously applying the concept, but eventually, when he practices it a lot, he would be able to just attempt the question without, I mean, subconsciously applying the concept. He won't have to uh, keep it in mind that he has to apply this concept while doing this. Initially, he has to make it a point.
Right.
Yes.
And also, Varun and everybody else who's listening to us right now, when you're facing these difficulties, a lot of the times you need somebody to be mentoring you, to be guiding you. You need some access to people who have already been there, done that, like we are doing today with Apurva. But since Apurva also has his college and exams and everything else, you won't be able to really do the hand holding bit. But then there are courses like the course that has been developed and curated by Olive Board and Success Mantra, and you can check them out. You can check out those courses. You can check out the mentors that will be there with you, holding your hand and telling you how to improve, how to get better, how to do mock tests, and how to prepare yourself both mentally and physically to be able to sit through that exam and gain the maximum marks possible. So you can always check out courses that are being curated on this, and different duration courses. There are courses for 1 month, there are courses for 12 months, and you can check them out by checking out the link in the description description box. So those courses have been developed by Success Mantra and Olive Board in collaboration with each other. Success Mantra has always been doing very well in CLAT coaching, and also helping out law students in different kinds of exams, competitive exams. And Olive Board has also now come in the fora of law. Before that, Olive Board has always been known for helping people crack different variety of exams, competitive exams like banking exams and CA exams and things like that. And now they have come up with courses on law. Before they also have courses for judiciary, and now they have courses for CLAT as well. So you can definitely take advantage of that, and you can definitely reach out to anybody from Success Mantra team or Olive Board team to know more about these courses. And we also have a very important announcement, which is that if you use the promo code Apurva, which is APOORV, which has been exclusively dedicated to Apurva for doing so well and for all the wonderful, lovely tips he shared so candidly with all of you today. So, if you use the promo code, you'll get exclusive offers, you'll get discounts, you can also get more benefits from the course. So, just check it out and use the promo code Apurva, APOORV. That is also, I think, one way to get better, and especially when you are managing a lot of things together, when you're managing your board exams, when you're managing other things that you're doing, when you're also preparing for CLAT but don't really know what to do and how to start, and don't have the right guidance, because a lot of the times, we don't really find people who would be there to actually give us the right tips. And the way Apurva has shared so beautifully, so candidly, his trade secrets, it's very rare for people to actually do that. So you can always help yourselves by checking out courses like these. Now, one more question we have from Tushar Apurva. Tushar is asking how to give daily mocks and how to improve score.
Uh, what I would say is that make sure you give the mark between 2 to 4, because that is usually when CLAT happens. So if you're giving mocks in that time frame, you get into the zone key. Every day, 2 to 4, I'm writing a mock test. So the CLAT day does not seem any different. This is
Right,
something you can do. Another thing is that simply giving marks is useless unless you analyze it as well. Give the
right,
marks, you get the result, and right after you get the result, you make it a point to go through the entire answer sheet and make sure to see where you went wrong, what all questions you did wrong, and how you can improve on it. What are your weak points? How you can improve on it. This is something you should do no matter what. 2 hours for mock and 2 hours for analyzing the mock. Unless you analyze the mock, a
absolutely,
mock test is useless. There's no point. It's just
absolutely.
like mindlessly writing tests but not looking at where exactly you went wrong. So this is something you should do for sure if you want to increase your marks. For example, initially I felt like I was not performing well in critical reasoning, and I was not analyzing the marks as well. I was just mindlessly giving the marks. I was not improving at all. My scores were stagnated. But later, when I realized, okay, let's just go through the answer sheet and see where I went wrong. What can I do better? I could see a significant increase in my marks. This is something everyone should do.
Right. Thank you so much, Apurva. Before I also hand over the mic to Apurva to give us some parting words of wisdom before we end the session, I would like to sincerely thank Apurva for all his time and all the tips that you've given. And the thing that I honestly loved about this session was the fact that you did not just talk about how well you did in this, how well you did in that. You didn't, like we talked about bragging rights. You just didn't say that, okay, I have always been good at that. So I did that good, well, and things like that. You talked about your failures. You talked about your learnings. You were very humble and very, very candid. So thank you so much for that. I think that is the only way for one to improve oneself and for one to help others, to be really honest and to be accepting of the human fallacy factor, where you know that there are things that will go wrong, there are things that you won't know, but there is always a chance, there's always a hope that you can get better. And the key to that is to keep trying, to keep practicing, and to completely never ever say that this is something that you can't do, or this is something that you don't know. There's everything within your power once you know how to work for it. So thank you so much for bringing that to the fore today in our discussion, Apurva. And now I hand it over to you to share any parting words of wisdom with our audience members, with people who are watching you right now and people who will watch you later, people that you've inspired so much. And over to you.
Okay, so my final words would be that now that I'm at Nalsar, I realize that preparing for CLAT is not only preparing for getting into law school, it is also preparing for getting into law school and surviving law school. So getting into a habit of reading will be useful for law school as well. This is something you should keep in mind while you're preparing for CLAT. There are no shortcuts. Make sure you work diligently, make sure you're focused, and make sure you put in the requisite hard work. Second thing, it is really important that you take good care of your health, get proper sleep, exercise, and drink lots of water. And be in a good mental space. Don't fret too much about it. It's not rocket science. If you put in the work, if you are smart and hardworking at the same time, you'll be able to crack it. That's all. That's all for me.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Apurva. And I wish you all the very best in everything that you do in life. I'm sure you'll go far, very, very far. And we'll be interviewing you once more. Maybe you'll crack some other exam. Maybe you will get that job that nobody else did. Maybe you'll become the topmost lawyer of our country. Whatever you do, I wish you all the very best in all your future endeavors. And thank you so much for being with us, for spending your time with us, and helping out the incoming generation of lawyers at their initial nascent stage to make that call whether or not they want to pursue law, whether or not they can do it. And I'm sure that you've ignited that ray of hope and that inspiration in all the people who are listening to you. So thank you so much for that. And to our audience members, to people who are listening to us, if there is anything that you need clarification on, if there is anything that you need more details on, feel free to comment. This video will be on YouTube. You can comment your queries. You can go to the links that are given in the description box and reach out to anybody from Success Mantra or Olive Board to help you out, make a better, make informed decisions about your career and your life. And everybody is here just to support you. Thank you so much for being with us. All the very best and have a great Sunday. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.